different witnesses took the stand today, including Cassie Ventura's mother, Combs' former personal assistant, as well as a male exotic dancer.
Scott Biscotti, also known as rapper Kid Cudi, just finished testifying about what he says happened with Combs in 2011 and 2012.
Threats and intimidation around him, which eventually led this assistant to quit that job.
George Kaplan, the first person granted immunity in this case, wrapped up his testimony about working for Combs.
What started as another day in court quickly spiraled into something no one expected. Diddy's former assistant took the stand, and what he revealed could change everything. Behind the flashy lifestyle and fame, there was a hidden routine: hotel setups, secret aliases, strange instructions, and an assistant who says he was ordered to pick up more than just groceries. Then came the bombshells from Homeland Security, the kind that make you question what really went on inside those mansion walls. And this was only the beginning. George Kaplan wasn't just another assistant, he was the gatekeeper to Diddy's personal world. And on day 8 of the trial, he cracked it wide open. The jury hadn't even seen him yet when whispers started buzzing. This man had just been granted court-ordered immunity after pleading the Fifth, and suddenly he was ready to talk. That alone was enough to make the entire courtroom lean in. Kaplan worked directly under Diddy as his executive assistant between 2013 and 2015. His job wasn't just carrying bags or scheduling studio time. According to his sworn testimony, he was Diddy's personal fixer. He booked secret hotel rooms across LA, New York, and Miami, each under fake names like Frank Black, a nod to Biggie's alias. Inside those rooms, he'd prepare everything: candles, liquor, baby oil, astroglide, even high-end speakers, all charged to a corporate credit card. He wasn't just fluffing pillows, he was setting the stage. But what really shook the room was what he said about the drugs. Kaplan confessed he was tasked with procuring MDMA and other substances on multiple occasions directly at Diddy's request. In one instance, he picked up ecstasy in Miami using Diddy's own money. In another, he did the same in LA, coordinating with a separate dealer. He wasn't hiding it. He described the process step by step, without hesitation, likely because that immunity deal protected him from prosecution. Kaplan also described what came after these events: the cleanup. He recalled brown, crystallized powders left in the sink, liquor bottles scattered everywhere, and explicit products used and discarded. And hotel staff? They were never involved. He cleaned it all himself to protect Diddy's image. Why? Because hotels, he said, have been known to sell scandalous photos to tabloids, and exposure was Diddy's greatest fear. Then came the pressure. Kaplan said threats were routine, sometimes over something as trivial as getting the wrong kind of water. Once, when he mixed 2 half-gallons of alkaline water to make a full one, Diddy allegedly exploded in rage, threatening his job over the mistake. This wasn't just about maintaining luxury. This was about control. And yet, this was just the beginning. The calm didn't last long. As George Kaplan's testimony rocked the courtroom, the government dropped something even heavier: cold, physical evidence. Homeland Security agents took the stand next, laying out what they found inside Diddy's Miami mansion during the March 2024 raid. And the list was staggering. Special Agent Jared Gannon, a member of the Miami human trafficking group, walked the jury through a laundry list of seized items that prosecutors claim weren't just accessories to a luxurious lifestyle, but tools of something far darker. And it wasn't vague or suggestive. They had photos, they had exhibits, they had names, bags, labels, and chemical results. Inside Diddy's primary bedroom closet, agents found more than a dozen pairs of 7-inch high heels, sex paraphernalia, and red stilettos that were shown directly to the jury. They recovered a black Gucci bag that, at first glance, could have held jewelry or cologne, but when opened, it revealed a pharmacy's worth of pills, loose powder, and even a rolled-up $100 bill. The bag tested positive for cocaine and ketamine. Next to it, a bottle of Lumify eye drops. Only it didn't contain eye drops. Instead, it held MDMA and ketamine, repackaged to hide in plain sight. They weren't done. agents discovered 3 phones stuffed inside expensive Balenciaga boots, another black straw coated in drug residue, and a plastic cap labeled DBL Wash, testing positive for cocaine. Every time the prosecution displayed a new image or bag of pills, jurors locked in, some scribbling notes furiously, others staring wide-eyed at the screens, and the pills weren't just random colors. There were orange triangles with Tesla logos, pink ones, blue ones, rectangular bars identified as Xanax, and even mushroom capsules labeled Golden Teachers. One wooden box marked Puffy contained clear crystals that tested positive for MDMA and ecstasy, as if each drawer in the house told a new story. Then came the baby oil. A hallway closet held 25 bottles of it, alongside 31 containers of astroglide. Prosecutors didn't spell it out, but their implication was obvious. Combined with Kaplan's testimony, this wasn't just indulgent, it was premeditated preparation, and what followed turned the tension up even higher. Weapons. A .45 caliber handgun was discovered in a suitcase in a utility closet. Magazine rounds were beside it, and days earlier, agents had already revealed the seizure of multiple AR-15 rifles, all with scratched-off serial numbers. The message was chilling. Not only were drugs being concealed in plain sight, but illegal firearms were also hidden throughout the home. What the defense would later argue is that Diddy wasn't present during the raids, and that no fingerprint or DNA evidence directly ties him to those weapons. But to the jury, the optics were damning. Drugs disguised in common items, a loaded gun, a box literally labeled with his nickname. It was no longer about whispers, it was evidence, and it looked calculated, but the government wasn't done. The next testimony would take the courtroom from shocking to psychologically devastating. As the courtroom tried to process the avalanche of physical evidence, the prosecution shifted gears from drugs and guns to the mind. Their next witness didn't carry bags of exhibits or mention secret hotel rooms, but her impact was just as powerful. Her name, Dr. Dawn Hughes, a board-certified forensic psychologist who previously testified in the high-profile Johnny Depp v. Amber Heard trial. This time, she wasn't diagnosing Diddy. She wasn't even diagnosing Cassie. But she was there to answer the question that everyone, especially the jury, had been silently asking. If Cassie was abused, why didn't she just leave? Dr. Hughes was what the legal world calls a blind expert. She didn't personally evaluate Cassie Ventura or any other victims. Instead, she explained psychological patterns, what coercion looks like, how trauma bonds form, and why victims often stay long after the abuse begins. She started fast, faster than most could take notes, diving into cycles of emotional, physical, and sexual abuse. She broke down how abusers isolate their victims, how manipulation replaces logic, and how the fear of losing safety, money, or even one's life can override any instinct to run. Even though she never mentioned Cassie by name, everyone in the courtroom knew who she was really describing. One of the most striking explanations she gave was about trauma bonding. When abuse starts after love, the victim clings to the memory of who their partner used to be. That emotional confusion, mixed with humiliation, fear, and shame, becomes a prison. Victims often don't see a way out. They hope the good version of their partner will return, and each act of violence only tightens the psychological trap. She talked about victims who are belittled so deeply, they begin to believe they deserve what's happening. Some become so ashamed of the abuse, they isolate themselves further, afraid to speak up. Others stay because they simply have nowhere else to go. No money, no housing, no freedom. She explained how the control isn't always just physical. It's financial, emotional, and deeply manipulative. She even addressed the backlash Cassie received when she filed her lawsuit in 2023. People asked, why did she stay? Why did she go to those events? Why did she set them up if they were abusive? Dr. Hughes didn't answer those questions for Cassie directly, but she gave the jury a lens through which to see those actions not as consent, but as survival. But the defense came in sharp. In cross-examination, attorney Jonathan Bach, who hadn't yet appeared during trial, took center stage, and he didn't waste time. His strategy was surgical. Discredit Dr. Hughes, not by attacking her personally, but by dismantling her authority. He hammered the point that she didn't evaluate Cassie. She didn't read police reports, she didn't speak to any witnesses, so how could her general statements apply to this case? He brought up a presentation she gave a decade ago. He questioned how many times she met with the prosecution. He even suggested that expert witnesses like her are just hired guns. And while the jury was attentive during her direct examination, the energy shifted. Some leaned back, others stopped writing. Still, doctor. Hughes held her ground, calm, composed, and clear. She never claimed to know what Cassie went through, but she explained in stark psychological detail how people like Cassie could have gone through something exactly like this, and to many in that room, that was enough to cast the shadow of credibility back on Cassie's words. But the chaos wasn't over. What Homeland Security revealed next would bring everything full circle. And it started with a Gucci bag and a rolled-up $100 bill. After the psychological storm unleashed by Dr. Hughes, the prosecution circled back to hard evidence, something tangible, something the defense couldn't cross-examine away. That's when Special Agent Jared Gannon from Homeland Security took the stand. His testimony wasn't about theories or speculation. It was about what federal agents physically removed from Diddy's $40 million Star Island mansion during a raid in March 2024. And what he described? It was damning. Jurors leaned in as Agent Gannon detailed what he and his team uncovered inside Diddy's private residence, items that weren't just strange or incriminating, but downright impossible to explain away. Let's start with the closet. Inside, agents found rows of red high heels, more than a dozen pairs. But these weren't just any shoes. One pair was brought into court and displayed for the jury. Nearby, they uncovered sex toys, baby oil, and bottles of astroglide. Over 30 bottles, all stored in the master bedroom and hallway closets. Not unusual on their own, maybe. But this wasn't all. Inside a black Gucci bag left on a dresser, investigators found what looked like a chemical cocktail. Dozens of pills, orange, yellow, pink, blue, a rolled-up $100 bill, a cut-up black straw, residue that later tested positive for ketamine and cocaine. Even the Lumafil eye drops found nearby turned out not to be eye drops at all. But liquid MDMA jurors were then shown photos of every item. A Ziploc bag labeled Supreme filled with pills that tested positive for ecstasy. That the incident happened, that it was real, that Diddy had indeed made that threat, and now prosecutors were bringing Cootie to the stand. The emotional weight of his testimony could be pivotal. It takes the idea of intimidation, already highlighted through threats against assistants and former employees, and stretches it into something violent, destructive, and terrifying. It shows not just a pattern of behavior, but escalation. Racketeering cases hinge on showing that someone isn't just involved in crime, they're orchestrating it. That there's an enterprise, a structure, a repeated way of doing things. Cuddy's testimony threatens to prove just that. Diddy didn't just lash out behind closed doors, he allegedly sent a brutal public message. Even more damning, the prosecution tied this to a known predicate offense, arson. If proven, it further cements the pattern needed for a conviction under federal racketeering law. Combined with previous testimony from Cassie, from assistants, from Homeland Security agents, the picture becomes much harder to ignore. But Cootie wasn't the only name expected. Also on deck were Mila Morales, a hotel staffer believed to have seen questionable setups during Diddy's infamous hotel events, Josh Croft, and Tony Abraham. Though their connections to the core case weren't fully revealed, their inclusion signaled that prosecutors were closing in, lining up all the final threads before a potential bombshell conclusion. And with the long Memorial Day weekend approaching, the court was racing the clock to get through every witness, direct and cross, before Friday's break. But the real pressure wasn't on the schedule. It was on Diddy. Because when Kid Cudi walks into that courtroom and takes the stand, he won't just be testifying about the past. He'll be pulling back the curtain on what prosecutors are calling a criminal empire, one that stretched across years, states, assistants, hotels, and possibly explosions. As the prosecution laid out its evidence, brick by brick, witness by witness, the defense didn't just sit back and take it. Their strategy was becoming clear: discredit every damning voice, distract from the most damaging allegations, and deny the possibility that Diddy was orchestrating anything close to a criminal enterprise. Enter Jonathan Bach. He wasn't a familiar face in the courtroom, at least not until day 8, but when he stepped in for the cross-examination of Dr. Dawn Hughes, he did so like a veteran stage performer stealing a spotlight. Calm, calculated, meticulous, Bach began slicing into the prosecution's star witness. His mission: undermine the credibility of Dr. Hughes, the forensic psychologist who had explained to the jury why victims of abuse, like Cassie Ventura, might stay in toxic, violent relationships. But Bach wasn't arguing about science, he went after her methodology. He questioned whether she had even reviewed any medical records, police reports, or factual documents relating to Cassie. He pointed out that she had never met or evaluated Cassie and had instead offered only general testimony. To the jury, the defense hoped this sounded like guesswork, academic theory, not evidence. He even challenged her ethics. Did she violate APA guidelines by offering opinions without direct evaluations? Did she omit information that would have painted a fuller picture? Bach asked about a similar case she'd testified in, one where she also hadn't evaluated the alleged victim. It was meant to draw a pattern, one that the defense claimed disqualified her as a reliable expert. Then it got personal. Bach brought up Dr. Hughes' earnings from testimony like this. He subtly implied that she wasn't a neutral expert. She was a hired gun, someone paid to support the prosecution's narrative, whether she had the full facts or not. It was bold, it was aggressive, and judging by Diddy's body language, his nods, his calm gaze, it was the moment he'd been waiting for. But Bach wasn't done. He questioned whether victims seeking civil lawyers were motivated by truth or money, whether righting wrongs, as Dr. Hughes put it, was just legal code for a payout. The judge had to interrupt, urging him to move on, but the seed had been planted. To the defense, everything was a performance, from emotional abuse to expert analysis. If they could unravel the prosecution's credibility, they could make the chaos seem like noise, not a coordinated criminal plan. But that plan was about to be tested in the final phase of the trial. If the testimonies shocked the courtroom, the evidence from Diddy's Miami mansion detonated like a bomb. On March 25, 2024, Homeland Security agents stormed his luxury property on Star Island. What they uncovered wasn't just alarming, it was deeply incriminating. The kind of material that doesn't rely on opinion or memory. The kind that stares jurors in the face and says, "This is real." Special Agent Jared Gannon, a member of the Miami human trafficking group, took the stand. He'd been part of the team investigating Diddy since November 17, 2023, the day after Cassie Ventura filed her now-settled federal lawsuit. That timing alone spoke volumes, but it was what they found that left the courtroom stunned. More than a dozen pairs of high heels, sex toys, a closet in Diddy's master bedroom loaded with intimate items. One of the most damning discoveries? A pair of Balenciaga boots, not because of their price tag, but because inside them were 3 hidden cell phones. Why were they concealed? Whose phones were they? Homeland Security didn't say directly, but the implication was loud and clear. That was just the beginning. On a nearby dresser sat a black Gucci bag, packed with pills, powders, and drug paraphernalia. A rolled-up $100 bill, black cut-up straws, and containers labeled as eye drops, but filled with MDMA and ketamine. Even the bottle labeled DBL Wash tested positive for cocaine. Nearly every drawer revealed something: orange pills with Tesla logos, pink and blue capsules, and crystallized substances tucked in wooden boxes labeled Puffy. And it didn't stop at drugs. In the hallway closet, 25 bottles of baby oil, 31 bottles of astroglide, and that wasn't even the full inventory. In a utility closet, agents found a .45 caliber handgun inside a suitcase, displayed in court with a zip tie to ensure it couldn't fire. But perhaps most chilling were the AR-15s found at the home. Their serial numbers had been intentionally scratched off. These weren't just weapons. They were a statement, a warning. The prosecution's point was simple. This wasn't just a celebrity's private stash or a collection of party supplies. It was a meticulously curated environment, one built to maintain control, eliminate evidence, and facilitate what they described as a criminal operation. The defense tried to spin it. They claimed Diddy wasn't home, that nothing linked the weapons directly to him, that some items were personal effects or planted, but the damage was done. To the jury, this wasn't speculation. These were photographs, bags of seized items, lab results showing traces of narcotics. This wasn't about what someone claimed anymore. It was about what investigators held in their hands, and with each new exhibit, the narrative shifted. What had once been a story about accusations had become a case built on physical evidence. Just when it felt like the courtroom had absorbed all the shock it could handle, prosecutors dropped one final name: Scott Mescudi. The world knows him as Kid Cutie. He was announced as the next witness to take the stand, and suddenly, the narrative wasn't just about what Diddy did behind closed doors. It was about who he allegedly tried to destroy in public. Why is Kid Cutie important? Because according to Cassandra Ventura's 2023 lawsuit, Diddy once threatened to blow up Cutie's car over suspicions that he was romantically involved with her. Shortly after that threat, Cuddy's car actually exploded, and when the media pressed Diddy's team for a response back then, they didn't deny it. They reportedly said, "This is all true." So now Cuddy isn't just a music industry peer, he's a potential victim. His testimony could serve as critical proof of Diddy's pattern of intimidation, retaliation, and unhinged control. But Kid Cutie won't be the only one testifying next. The government plans to push 5 witnesses through before the Memorial Day weekend begins, including Cutie, hotel staff like Mila Morales, and others like Josh Croft and Tony Abraham. Their connections to Diddy remain murky for now, but the prosecutors clearly believe their testimonies will add even more fire to the blaze. George Kaplan's cross-examination is also expected to resume. Defense attorneys will likely attempt to downplay his credibility by painting him as a disgruntled employee or someone who benefited from immunity. But the sheer detail and calm confidence of his direct testimony, paired with physical evidence from the Miami raid, makes that a risky angle. There's tension in the air now, inside and outside the courtroom. Reporters on the scene say more people than ever are lining up for public seats. Fans, critics, and curious onlookers all want to see who walks in and out of that courthouse each morning. And as the witness list grows, so does speculation. Will anyone flip? Could one of these witnesses deliver the final blow that shatters Diddy's defense? Prosecutors are racing against the clock to present a complete picture, and with each testimony, the defense scrambles to keep their case from unraveling. The jury is watching closely. Every new name, every seized object, every contradiction, it all matters now. Because this isn't just about allegations anymore. It's about a courtroom full of evidence, a mansion full of secrets, and a celebrity empire that might be built on silence, fear, and power. And with Kid Cutie stepping up next, the trial may finally hit its boiling point.